Thursday, we left off at the point of looking at the anatomy. I had you guys looking at it based on these little models that we have, okay, and tried to show you that they were trying to represent the nephron based on this little white squiggly line, okay. So now, looking at the video, are you following me okay right now on this anatomy? Where we're going to see that I have these renal columns, these renal pyramids. I'm going to have my nephron. I'm going to have my blood flow. I'm going to have my calyces. In other words, I had a minor one at the end. Okay, we don't really have the anatomy for it, okay, but in the pictures that were shown up there, did you kind of pick up on our major where it said 2 to 3, and that led into the renal, pelvis, a little portion of the bend of the ureter, okay? We don't really have that on the models, okay? So that's pretty much the point that we had gotten to on Thursday in talking about the anatomy. And like I keep saying, in just about any system that we have, anatomy is always the easy part, okay? And the kidneys, their structure, even though a tad bit difficult, okay, their structure is still relatively easy, okay? So when we begin to look at what's going to happen, a couple of things I want you to keep in mind as we talk about them. Remember, we have our cortex portion, and remember, cortex always means to the outside, okay? Medulla always means to the inside. In a human kidney, in a kidney, there will be anywhere from roughly 7 to 10 renal pyramids that'll be present, okay? Blood flow, renal artery, renal vein. I collect into papilla, minor calyces, major calyx, into the pelvis, and into the ureter, okay? And we're going to hopefully have, now, in the production of urine, all right, a term we can't really forget is something called filtrate. There is a difference, okay? Now, like I showed from the video, our blood flow. So if we look at the blood flow to the kidneys, all right, I keep trying to point out, blood leaves the heart, goes by way of the aorta. We make it to the renal artery. It's the first one we get to. But we have to have that flow actually make its way, and it's really unique how this vessel structure has developed so that we go around and make it to all of these little nephrons located in the pyramids. So note that we have our arterial flow into the afferent arteriole, making it to the glomerulus. Once it makes it to, they're trying to show a little nephron here, the glomerulus. It is not the blood that makes it through the tubular structure. Blood makes its way to the glomerulus, and at that point, materials will be, because they're under pressure, almost pushed out of the blood. And then it simply goes to The veins. So what gets pushed out, almost, I use that term, and you'll see why, okay? As it filters out, the first thing that we formed at the level of that glomerulus was filtrate. That is not, by any stretch of the imagination, urine. Once we make it to a glomerulus, it has to go through the tubular structures, make its way to a collecting duct before it becomes urine that will collect at the papilla, making its way to the minor calyx, making its way to a major calyx, making its way to the renal pelvis, to the ureter. I know, right? Like I said earlier, it's going to almost be like, okay? But this really is the cool, I say that about everything, okay? It is really a cool process that happens, okay? And, hey, I don't know about y'all, I kind of like the fact that these work correctly. All right, because like I said earlier, if you know anybody who's had any type of kidney problems, okay, it's not a fun situation to be in, physically, okay? I'll never forget, my first year of teaching, I had a student, and he was out for a while, and I'm like, okay, well, I hope everything's okay. And when he returned, well, he had contacted me and everything. He'd actually been playing touch football. And while playing touch football, I guess somebody touched way too hard, okay? Or I don't know if it was an accident or what, all right? And I had never heard of this, never. Fractured his kidney. His kidney was broken. Yeah, he was in the hospital for a long time. So I didn't even know that could happen. So, Nate?
What's the difference between a fracture and a ruptured kidney?
Usually when they talk about rupture, I think that doesn't heal.
Okay.
Okay, but a fracture, I guess with rest and everything, there can be some healing that can take place in the fracture. So, I have 100 questions. Okay, well, what happened with urine? What did they have to do? Blah, 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 blah. And so I'll never forget that. This process that's going to occur, okay, yes, it does. It filters the blood, just like we think about, okay? So when we're looking at all of this, remember, it has to get to a cellular level for something to happen. And therefore, it is going to be the nephron that is the functional unit of the kidney. All right? All this other big stuff, okay, this gross anatomy, okay, that is providing a pathway, okay, but it is going to be the nephron that is the functional unit. So, when we get to the nephron, the blood is going to flow, okay, into this structure that is termed a glomerulus, okay? Do you remember us mentioning that term any other time? Can you remember us talking about a glomerulus for any of the other topics that we've covered in class?
Was it the
Not circulatory.
nervous system?
Nervous. We talked about in some of the special senses, okay, some of the structure for the nerves. they pass through a glomerulus, a globular structure, okay? So, in looking at my glomerulus, okay, because that nephron, my functional unit, like I've said, we have about 1 million per kidney, all right? What it's going to contain, that nephron is going to have what's called the renal corpuscle vessels, okay? Where we need to filter blood and plasma. Because if you remember, plasma is the matrix of blood, and it's carrying ions, nutrients, and that sort of thing. So, that contains my glomerulus, and around that is a capsule called the glomerular capsule. Now, the goal at this point, have my blood flow move in to this structure, this glomerulus, and leave. Now, based upon the structure, when the blood enters, the blood has pressure. Because one of the things about this structure, do you see how they're trying to show the blood moving through at the cell, at the cellular level of the red blood cells? Okay? So this means that the blood is under high pressure. But note that wrapped around, because they're trying to show you a cut view of these vessels, that these vessels are wrapped. Does everybody kind of see that? Now, they have this wrapping, okay? They're going to have this structure that's going around them, and one of the things that's going to be able to happen, that structure has slits in it. So what that means, as the blood moves through this structure, the pressure that's getting created will push materials across this structure, this membrane. But note, red blood cells don't make it across. If red blood cells make it across at this point, something's wrong. If red blood cells make it out of this filtration process at this point, they will continue through all of the remaining tubes and come out in your urine. And that's not good. If you have red blood, if you have blood in your urine, it's usually indicative of something being wrong. Maybe it's a kidney infection. Okay? Who's to know? You have to have it checked out. So at this point, what can move are small molecules and water. So, because that can move and it gets pushed into this little space right here, in between this vascular structure and then the capsule, because this is my glomerular capsule. The materials that get pushed is now termed filtrate. You do not at that point,